Welcome. My name is Richard. I'm the Fletcher here with the Fellowship of the Black Swan, in addition to being an archer in the company of these good fellows.
Hi, welcome to Black Swan. I'm Selena.
And I am Tim. I'm an archer and one of the craftsmen here. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at some of the gear that we use and some of what we do. We're a group that portrays a mid to late 14th century English archers company and associated craftspersons and camp followers. So we assembled some of the gear here that we have that we generally take out to our fairs and festivals in more normal times, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about it.
Well, being a company of archers, we can't go any further unless we talk about the bows we use. And in our time, bow was a bow. That's what it was known as. Now this smaller one is a lighter weight bow. It's perfect for hunting because it is a draw weight of about 75 pounds. That's something that a competent archer can easily hold and get an aim on the game and then release. But because we're military archers, our noble weapon is the war bow. And a war bow is a bow that has a draw weight of upper 90s all the way up to almost 200 pounds. And we've got a couple of those bows here. This one is 90 to 95 pounds at draw. So this would be considered a lightweight war bow. We have another lightweight war bow here. This one is about 104 pounds. There is something extraordinary about this bow, though. As you can see, it's smaller than the bow that I just showed you, but it is made from an incredible piece of yew with very, very tight grains. This stave of yew is probably 1 in a million. And having that tight grain allows a heavy pound bow to be in such a small form. The more common size war bow is this one at 140 pounds. And of course, a bow like this, very few archers are going to be able to draw to their ear and hold it to get an aim. A war bow is drawn to the ear and released. So it's not really an appropriate hunting bow where you're going to wait for the right shot. And all of these bows that I just showed you are made from Pacific yew. This last one is made from English yew. This is a 184 pound bow, and it is massive. And one of the reasons it's massive is that it being English yew, it's a low elevation growth and the rings are far apart. So it takes a beefier chunk of wood to get that kind of poundage. Okay, this is the bow with the incredibly tight grain, the 1 in a million stave. There's no pins or knots anywhere along it. It is an exceptional bow. And another interesting fact about this bow, for anybody who's been in the archery community in the Pacific Northwest for some time will have heard the name of Don Adams. Well, this was the last war bow that Don Adams made before he retired. Right. This is the 184 pound English yew bow, low elevation, so longer growing season with much wider rings. It is a beefier bow, but it is more typical of the bows. It's got pins, it's got knots. This is the crooked stick. Now, we're going to have Tim demonstrate shooting a war bow, the proper technique for mastering this type of bow.
All right, so the bow I'm going to be drawing today is going to be this one here. This is definitely a lighter weight war bow. This is made of Italian yew. It's made to the same dimensions as some of the bows that were found on the wreck of the Mary Rose. This one comes in at just under 100 pounds, so this is definitely at the absolute bottom end of the draw weights for historical war bows. But since I haven't been shooting since I was 6 years old, like medieval English archers mostly would have, this is pretty good for me. And basically what I want to show is the technique for how to draw a heavy bow, and my hope is that it'll give you the chance to see how it's done, how it's different from the modern draw that a lot of archers are using nowadays, and hopefully allow you to increase your draw weight and maybe give one of these a try one day. The arrows we're going to be shooting are going to be these practice blunts here. You see blunts like this in a lot of manuscript illustrations used either for practice at the earthen butts or also for hunting, particularly when they were wanting to take small game without destroying it or without punching holes in the hides. So let me come around to the front of the table here and we'll show you what we're going to do here. Now, when most people think about drawing a bow, what they're probably thinking of is some variation of the technique that was developed and popularized during the Victorian era. Now that technique that you're probably familiar with is your feet are basically parallel, in line with the target. Your left arm is more or less out straight like this, very upright T stance, and you're drawing back this way. Now that's fine for a lighter weight bow, but it just doesn't work for the heavier bows. And the reason why is that it forces you to use your arm muscles for most of the draw force, and your arm muscles are relatively small in proportion to the muscles of your back and shoulders. And so you're just not going to be able to draw those same high draw weights if you're trying to do it all with your arm. And even if you look at some of the period sources, they mention drawing bows with the strength of the body and not with the back of the arms. And they even specifically mention foot placement and leaning when you shoot. So rather than trying to do this very, very upright draw like this, instead what you do is you actually step forward with one foot and back like this. So the shooting line towards the target is almost between your feet this way. And then what you'll do is you'll arch your lower back and lean into the draw a little bit like this. And so what you're doing is you're starting with your right arm mostly bent already, and instead of trying to draw the weight of the bow by pulling your arm back, you're drawing it with this motion here. So you're using the back and shoulder muscles. So instead of doing this, you're doing this. So let's get an arrow on here. Let's see if we can do it. Again, this bow is just under 100 pounds draw weight. And because of the high draw weights of these bows, as Richard was saying, it's not a bow that you draw and hold. It's instinctive shooting. So once you're at full draw, you release.
Well, as the Fletcher in the company, I make arrows. And let's talk about some of the arrows. Tim has already demonstrated a blunt. This is a practice blunt, also used in hunting. These arrow shafts are ash, about 30 inches in length. They're reinforced with a sliver of horn to keep it from splitting on the string. The fletching itself is goose, and it's tied or whipped on with silk or linen. Now the arrowheads, these are made by an arrowsmith. That's a specialized blacksmith that makes arrowheads. And these particular arrowheads that I'm going to be showing you were made by Hector Cole, an arrowsmith in England. This particular head is known as a forker. Arrow will spin in flight, so you have it, as it's flying, it is spinning like this. We believe these were primarily used for hunting birds because you only have to get near it while the bird's in flight and it can knock it down. But a number of these arrowheads have been found on battlefields, so we have every reason to believe that they were used in battle, probably against horses, because they would tear the heck out of the flesh and maybe not outright kill the war horse of the French, but madden it. Another hunting arrow. Now this one is a much smaller arrow, lighter weight. This is for a hunting bow, a lightweight bow of maybe 60 to 75 pounds. It also has a horn blunt, but with a spike in it. So it will have the same impact knockdown as the blunt, but there's also a spike, which is going to tear up the hide and the flesh, but probably better ensure a kill. Now moving into warheads. This is a bodkin, which means needle in French, and this is great against punching a hole in leather and fabric armament. This is a long bodkin, and this is great against chain because it will come in and break the links of the chain and then penetrate the padding underneath and get into something vital before the arrow is stopped. Then the head, in particular use against plate, is a very blunt, like a warhammer head. This is designed to punch a hole in plate armor. Head found on medieval battle sites is what's known today as the Type 16. This is a jack-of-all-trades arrowhead. It can kill horses, it can kill unarmored men, it can break chain, it can penetrate leather, and to certain situations it can penetrate a bit of plate. So it's an all-around versatile arrowhead. It doesn't do any of these things exceptionally well like some other arrowheads, but it does a lot of these things okay enough to be a popular arrowhead. And as a fletcher, I have some tools here that I use. These are all medieval replicas for trimming the shaft, cutting the grooves to insert the horn, for trimming the horn, trimming the fletching. Fletching starts with a whole wing feather. This is a gray leg goose, and the cinnamon and the white are from a peacock. Very, very sturdy, full-length fletching. The goose is particularly common. It is a common bird in our time in England. It has some water repellent properties, but the problem with goose is that it's very fine and soft, and if it's an arrow that you're going to be shooting over and over as opposed to a war arrow that's meant to be shot once, it will eventually wear out, so you want to use a stiffer feather for the fletching.
And so what we have here are some of the arms and armor that we bring out to our demonstrations. And these were designed to reflect what a well-equipped archer of the period would likely have had access to. So what we have here are sword and buckler. These were great for an archer because you can wear the sword and the buckler on your belt while you're shooting, and then once you run out of arrows or the enemy closes in too far where the bow is no longer of use, you can drop the bow and switch over to the sword and buckler. This is obviously a single-handed sword since you're using it with the buckler. And actually the earliest fight manual known is specifically on sword and buckler combat. It's manuscript 133. And the buckler, generally what it was used for is defending the sword hand while you're striking. So when you strike, you actually strike out like this. And it's also used for binding up and striking your opponent to control their hands and their weapons so you can deliver a counter-strike. The helmet that we have here would have been typical of 14th century examples. This could be worn alone by someone like an archer, or a helmet like this might also be worn with a great helm over the top of it if it was being worn by a knight. But what you'll want to notice here is that this mail, this is all handmade. This is riveted, just like the historical pieces were. So if you look very closely, you can see that each and every single ring, the ends are overlapped, they're pierced, and they each have a tiny little wedge-shaped rivet holding them closed. So to penetrate this armor, you actually have to physically break the link to get the blade through. And then finally what we have here is a piece of equipment that would have been known variously as an akiton, a gambeson, a jack. And basically what this is fabric armor. Now these could be made in a number of ways. They could just be padding for wearing underneath other types of armor, or they could be armor in their own right. This one I made to be armor in its own right. On the body of this is 18 layers of fabric. So you can see if you look at the edge, that comes in at right around a ½ inch thick, and this weighs about 14 pounds. So the idea is that particularly with bodkin points, where the edges are not sharp enough to slice through the fabric, they actually have to spread the weave of the fabric of 18 to maybe as much as 30 layers of fabric in the historical examples. And so while it's not perfect protection, this would stop some arrowheads. The tailoring of a garment like this is very important because obviously it's very stiff. So if you notice, it's very narrow at the shoulders, and it also has a hinge built into the elbow. And what that allows you to do is have full mobility in the arm, so you can do this, and you can do this without having to lift the entire garment every time you move your arms. And finally what we have here is our cauldron. This is based on both period manuscript illustrations and also on a cauldron that was recovered from a ship burial. This is what we're going to be taking out to events to cook for our group, so we hope to see you there.
Well, thank you for watching. We hope you've enjoyed our little presentation here today and hope to see you in an event soon. For more information about the making of some of the items you saw today, please check us out on our website at blackswanfellowship.org.
Or visit us on Facebook, Fellowship of the Black Swan.
And if you'd like to learn how you can get involved, send us a message.
Cheers.
Oh, I'm going to have like the
Okay.
awkwardness. All right.
All right.
Well, that was fun.
That
Our
was
spread looks impressive.
Yeah.
Good.
That's,
All right.
It's nice to finally see that thing.
Oh, this is
out in the light
amazing.
of day.
This is friggin' amazing.